can look like or what it can do. So here I have it built out on ChatGPT. I actually also built it out on Claude to just sort of compare. And to be quite honest, they're quite similar in the output. I think because we've done a really good job of like providing clear instructions and example show notes, it is able to mimic those really, really easily. So as you saw in the instructions, you're going to go ahead and input all of the instructions, change out anything that's highlighted in yellow so that it reflects your podcast. And the thing with these instructions is it's mostly about these instructions and then these podcast show notes, which again, I've given you the example, like my example of this, but I want you to go and switch it out for the best podcast show notes that you have from your podcast. Or if you've never loved your show notes, go ahead and maybe use mine, but then what I would do is I would go to like ChatGPT or Claude and say, hey, I want my subject or I want my show notes to mimic this style and format or layout, whatever. Please go ahead and do that for this episode and this episode. And you can feed it transcripts from your actual podcast and it will produce show notes in the style that you want. And make sure that those are like a 10 out of 10, right? Because then whatever you put here in these example show notes is what your AI assistant is going to mimic. So you want to make sure that these are like the gold standard of what you want. So be really specific about that. The other thing that's important with this podcast production assistant in terms of like getting it right is, okay, so there's the show notes piece. I just want to come down here and show you this. Like I really like to have in every show notes, I like this as my final section, but sometimes I will come in and I actually want to update this right now because I'm not really promoting that lead magnet anymore. So this might be something you update over time as you have newer lead magnets or whatever it is that you want as your next steps. Or maybe you don't want to include next steps with your podcast show notes. That's okay. But I really try and maximize getting my podcast listeners onto my email list or taking that next step of buying from me. So I like to include the same kind of baseline blurb at the end of the show notes. And again, this is also where you're going to need to edit. So if you don't love the way that I do my titles, and I've provided in here a bunch of my own title examples, if this isn't your style, this is what you need to just change out. Grab the titles from, 10 of your best episodes or 20 of your best episodes and put them in here as examples. Okay. So that the assistant really knows your style. This is going to make sure that the output is bang on for you. What else did I want to come into? Oh yeah, I wanted to mention this SEO description. The reason why I have this here is because we publish our podcasts straight on my website. So there's like a player, they can actually listen to the podcast on my website itself. So each podcast has its own, it's essentially a blog article, right? Even though it's not a blog, it's really just the show notes and like a play button. But inside of that, I like to have a good SEO friendly blurb because we use something called Yoast, Yoast. It's like a plugin for WordPress where you can put in like your SEO keyword that you're trying to rank for and your description. And while we aren't doing this with huge intention of driving tons of SEO, like Google-based traffic, it's the easiest thing to like just layer into the workflow. And if it's already produced by the assistant, it's ready to go, right? So if you, depending on your podcast production workflow, like you may do a longer form blog article from each podcast, in which case you'll probably just want to have a separate AI assistant that takes the transcript and turns it into a blog post with your keyword, with your SEO description, with whatever it is that you need to like meet the SEO requirements that you're going for, right? So if you don't have this, just take it out, right? You don't need to keep all of the things that I've put in the instructions if you don't need them. Similarly, like if you don't want a long form email, don't do it. If you don't want key quotes or takeaways, don't do it. Like I have those there because I don't always do this, but sometimes if there's like a really good quote, I might use it for some sort of social media post. So that's kind of the background of this. So the more that you can just make sure that this is aligned with your podcast, the better it's going to be. Now I'm going to just go back. I have it open here and here is like a transcript. So literally when I record a podcast, I actually use this like free tool. It's this, it's the Restream Transcribe Audio to Text. I drop my transcript in here. It immediately downloads it into a chat file, which now I've lost. Where's my chat file? Hang on a second. Here it is somewhere. Here it is. Okay, sorry about that. So here's my big chat file, okay? So then all I do with this is I just select all. I literally just copy it. And then I'll come to my PodPal. And because I don't need to give it instructions, it's all built in. I literally will you could say, produce this show and then drop the transcript, or you can just drop the transcript. So my whole transcript is there. I just pasted it in, click enter, and it is going to go ahead now. That was a long episode. Here it goes. So it's going to give me show notes. So it's giving me, I think I asked for 10 title options, I want to say. So it'll give me 15 title options that align with the titles that I like the style of title I like to use. Now it's giving me my show notes. And again, this is very much aligned with how I want my show notes to be, which is like a couple of paragraphs with like some significant sort of hooks in here, what they'll learn, like the kind of the takeaways. And then, this is the other thing I love is like, I didn't tell it this, right? Like, remember I gave it this transcript. All I did in this transcript was I introduced the guest. So in the transcript, I said, okay, we're here with Justin Moore. He's the founder of Sponsor Magnet, and somewhere in here at the end, we talk about his book. But again, I didn't have to tell the app or the assistant these links. It just knew to pull them because it saw it in the transcript. So I love this. And do you know what it's meant? It's meant that we don't actually even collect stuff anymore from our guests. Like, we don't need to make them fill in a form because we don't need the form. Like, I don't need the links from there. It pulls it for me. So unless there's like something special that they've created for us, which that's fine. We can do that on a case-by-case basis. But I love this. And the other thing that it'll do is like, if I mentioned a link in the episode to something else, like let's say I'm recording a solo episode and I mention a book that I've read or something, it'll pull it, and it'll pull it in resources and links. So I love that part. Feels very time-saving. Key takeaways and quotes, next steps, and then it's given me an email newsletter. Like, in all honesty, I often don't use these email newsletters right now. I put them there just as like a maybe I will use them, maybe I won't. Sometimes I might use that as like a social caption. If I wanted it to be a better newsletter, like if I was really doing that for every podcast episode, I would just bring the transcript over to my email copywriter, AI assistant. And then it'll give me like a quick little, I have it prep like a little guest email that we can send, that my team can send for when it goes live. We don't have this. I don't do a lot of interview podcast episodes. If I did, this would probably be more, I'd have like more of a template for this. I would maybe be attaching some things, right? Like this might be more of a process. So if this is more of a thing for you, this is again where you could just have more in your instructions of this is how this needs to look, right? Or if it was like a little more complex, you might even think about building an AI assistant just for this, like just putting all of the guest material together that you need if it sort of becomes too much for PodPal. Because remember that our AI assistants, we want to, as much as possible, keep them quite tight on the tasks that they're doing for us so that they're doing it like at a 10 out of 10 level so that they don't start to get confused or hallucinate or do any of the things that sometimes AI can do. So if this was like a bigger thing for you, you might want to just pull that out into a separate assistant and just build something on its own. But again, one button, right? One button. And I've got all the things that I needed for my show. And it is super easy to just go from here and we can turn around and get episodes out in minutes, right? Like it's so much faster than it ever used to be. So that is PodPal. We love her. Have fun with her. Install her and let me know what you think.